Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Blip Pod. I'm Joey.
I am Darth Nolan the Wise.
Oh, that's a tragedy. We don't want to talk about
It's a tragedy.
This is a positive podcast.
That was the perfect response.
Well, as you can tell, today is a Star Wars episode. More specifically, about the sequel trilogy. Ooh.
Oh.
But it's not what you think. It's actually a report of rumors going around about Disney getting rid of the sequel trilogy and making it not canon to the Skywalker saga. So interesting.
Okay, yeah, so you told me about this when a couple days, yesterday or the other day, you text me and you're like, holy shit, and sent me this. And my initial reaction was, it's just Reddit or, YouTube or whatever doing what it usually does and kind of building up this whole, we've had weird things in the past where they're like, such and such is going to happen in the next Star Wars. Of course it never does. But if this is true, I don't even know what to think.
Well, it was by, it first got released by this YouTuber who, I forget his YouTube name now, but he has predicted stuff a lot in the past, and they've all come true. So he seems like he is a reliable source, but it still is just a rumor. So you could take this news with a grain of salt. But the sequel trilogy arguably has the most backlash out of anything Star Wars so far. Like, there's been some controversial stuff throughout the Star Wars universe with the prequels, or shows, or comics, or whatever, of some people liking stuff, some people hating it, but the sequel trilogy by far definitely receives the most hate, and I think Disney has realized that, and they seem to be blamed a lot for ruining Star Wars, so I think this is their way of trying to take back their mistakes and give fans what they want by not making it canon and ruining the original Star Wars.
I have a couple thoughts on this. First of all, I actually increasingly become less and less a fan of Rise of Skywalker as time goes on. When I saw it in theaters, I found it very enjoyable. And then when it came on Disney Plus, I watched it again. And I was like, okay, a little more cracks I didn't notice. And some, we've talked about how they could have done the sequels before on this channel and the podcast. And, I mean, hell, you've basically written a potentially better sequel story than they did. You know what I mean?
From the fans.
Yeah, it's that simple.
From the fans.
I have a couple thoughts on this. First of all, stop. Because if they remake the sequel trilogy, I'd much rather them make new content than remake something that's already made. Also, the entire problem with Rise of Skywalker and most of the sequel trilogy is that they gave into fan backlash. You know what I mean? When Force Awakens was too by the numbers, they did Last Jedi, which was a total new thing. And even though I like Last Jedi, when Last Jedi was too much of a new thing, they went all the way in the other direction and did it so by the numbers that it was... Some of the stuff is just kind of like, okay, I know exactly what's going to happen now. I think that they should just kind of get out of this whole era, keep it closed, do more stuff, do the Mando stuff, do the Ahsoka stuff. Heck, you've got the High Republic. You've got the future. You could do another... they keep talking about the Rian Johnson stuff. And people are like, oh, Rian Johnson, he's the worst. I hate him. I mean, we've seen Knives Out. When he is allowed to do what he wants to do, that guy's a fantastic writer and filmmaker when he's allowed to create his own characters. So give him any time period in Star Wars, and he'll make a good story.
Maybe the Old Republic, too. That might be interesting. I really want to see an Old Republic movie.
Dude, Old Republic movie, the only character you keep is Darth Revan, and then potentially, I know there was a bunch of stuff, have them played by Keanu Reeves. I would lose my mind. They would make so much money.
But that's also another problem that they had is that when Disney took over, they were playing it safe to be a money grab.
Yeah.
And the movies weren't as good. But when you saying how you are like second guessing this because you don't want them to remake a sequel, I'm not actually sure if they are planning to remake the sequel or just get rid of it completely and just have the end of the Skywalker saga be the Return of the Jedi. So, to be honest, there could be two ways. I could, if they just made it a different timeline, so that's not canon, and the Return of the Jedi is the final movie, I'm satisfied with that too. But if they, I still am interested in seeing a sequel trilogy just because of all the ideas we've come up with, because I want to see that happen so bad. So
Yes.
that's why I kind of want them to remake it to be our vision. But if it's not our vision, I might end up hating it again, and then we're going to wish that they didn't make that sequel either. So either way they play it, it's kind of an iffy move.
Also, dude, I would be more interested. They're like, oh, this is the end of the Skywalker saga. Yeah, but you have Rey, who's gonna start her own school, or so the novel says. She's technically a Grey. She's got a yellow lightsaber. They could bring in Ahsoka. Heck, I would like to see, instead of them doing redoing the sequel trilogy, now that Luke's dead, Leia's dead, Han's dead, you're off all that baggage. You could go into the future, and you could, I know people didn't like that, but you could do a post-sequels trilogy with Daisy Ridley. Like, people would show up for that.
That might be interesting, yeah. And also why it might be odd for Disney to just scrap it and just start completely new things is that in this era, with Disney taking over, their franchise is off of the sequel trilogy with all those characters, Rey, Kylo Ren, all their merchandising, the younger audience, and Galaxy's Edge. Everything Disney related to Star Wars is all marketed off the sequel trilogy. So if they just scrap it completely and say, oh, it's not canon, it's a different timeline, then they got to change their whole marketing for Star Wars again.
They will literally, and this is not an exaggeration, they'll actually be changing, they'll be losing billions of dollars because what they bought the rights to make the sequel trilogy for like $6 billion and then put billions into marketing and producing the movies.
Yeah.
Like, that's so much. Like, that's the equivalent of just giving up on a small country. Like, that is just thinking about that, regardless of the way they go, is insane to think about. That Star Wars has a higher net gross in 3 movies than some countries.
Yeah. And also doing this, like, when I heard it for the first time, I'm like, oh, that's honestly might be a good thing because a lot of people hate it. But then on the other hand, it could be a bad thing because if you just say, once they first come out, everyone just sees it as the sequel trilogy and you have all the characters from the originals and it feels like it's a sequel, just very bad sequel. And then they just, after it's done and hear all the backlash and just automatically goes, oh yeah, it's not canon, it's going to take place in different timeline. Then so many fans who aren't like used to the whole like different timelines and not used to that like Elseworld kind of deal, they're going to start getting confused and not know what's canon, what's not canon. And if they produce another sequel, then they're going to be confused about that. And also, it brings up another factor. If they keep on producing bad movies, then they could just originally just fix their mistake by saying, oh, wait, no, it's not canon. Don't worry about it. Like, if it's good, though, they might say, yeah, that's canon. So it's kind of just a safe gate for them to just to fall back on saying, oh, yeah, it's not canon because it was shit, you know?
I think, I will have to say, people hate on the sequels, and occasionally I hate on the sequels, but I generally like them. But no one can tell me that any of the sequels is objectively as bad. And don't get me wrong, I love Attack of the Clones. But you can't tell me that the storylines of the sequel are objectively worse than Attack of the Clones. And if George Lucas had given in to fan backlash, after Attack of the Clones, because there was a lot of hate for that movie, we would not have gotten Revenge of the Sith, which is now everyone's favorite freaking movie. So if they start going down this, we're not gonna play ball, we wouldn't have got the prequel trilogy. We wouldn't have gotten Clone Wars, the TV shows. We wouldn't have gotten Revenge of the Sith. I mean, heck, Return of the Jedi, when it came out in theaters, was hated. Even Empire Strikes Back was critically, some people were like, this is terrible. The first one was a kid's movie, and this one's dark and depressing. How could you? And they're some of the most classic movies of all time. That being said, to be clear, I am not saying the sequel trilogy is a classic. But I'm saying that kids who grew up on this will have the same nostalgia that we do for the prequels. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, because the younger generation that's growing up with the sequels, they love it.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, I don't think there's a single Star Wars movie I hate.
No.
It's just the sequels just frustrate me because it's built off an existing franchise. If there was no other Star Wars movies, the originals never happen, and the sequel movies are the originals, I would love them. I think they're really great. But the fact is that they're basing it off the originals, and they feel either too much like them and copying them, or it's so completely different that it just feels out of place from the franchise. That's why they don't work. If they were just their own thing, they would work, but that's their biggest problem, is because it's already built off a very popular existing franchise.
And I think the one thing that, it's interesting to see how Marvel execs and Star Wars execs handle things differently. Because I was just recently the other day listening to a bunch of stuff on Iron Man 2, which is objectively not as good as most other entries in the MCU up to that point. It's not bad, don't get me wrong. But there was a lot of studio involvement that kind of butchered what Jon Favreau wanted to do. But if they had taken all that criticism, we would not have... originally, after Iron Man 2, if everything went to plan... If everything went to plan, Robert Downey Jr. was going to quit the MCU with Iron Man 3. That is...
Would have sucked.
Think of if Robert Downey Jr. dropped out of the MCU in 2013. That would have been because of Marvel retconning stuff because of fan backlash. But instead, they're like, no, kind of screw you. We have an overarching plan. This is what we're going to do. I think that Star Wars needs to take in and be like, we understand that you're angry about some stuff. We still made billions of dollars. You still like it generally. What was that TikTok I sent you the other day? That most Star Wars fans nowadays aren't people who like Star Wars. They just hate Star Wars for very specific reasons. I was like, I've never heard a more accurate statement than that.
That's true.
It's so bad. I don't know. In a perfect world, would I like a better sequel trilogy? Yes. Would I like them to X this out, get rid of all... Because they've got some good stuff that's happening during the sequels. They've got some good comic books that happen with Poe Dameron. They got books coming out. Hell, we wouldn't have gotten Galaxy's Edge if the sequels didn't come out. Just crazy stuff like this, where I'm like, if you can this, you're canning so much content. Because people forget, it's not just the movies. You're canning future plans of Mando, because Mando has said it's all going to lean up to the First Order. So they have to redo that. They've got to redo a bunch of the animated TV shows. They got to basically uncanon half of their canon crap right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they right now they're coming out with great content with Mandalorian, and they have these super good plans with Ahsoka after Clone Wars. So I think they should really just focus on that and just say, all right, the sequels are done with, nothing to do about it now, and now let's just move on to better things. Because they have so many comics and great stories that aren't in movies or shows that are just amazing, and I'm sure anybody would want to see them within a movie or show. So right now, instead of starting up a new trilogy or a new era, they should focus on all those because Star Wars is such a huge universe, and there's just infinite amount of stories. They should start making content all out of those already existing stories throughout the Star Wars universe. Because those would be total hits. There's already audiences for them. So if you just turn that into a show or movie, I think they could have great success money-wise and for fan appreciation.
It's basically what they did with the prequels. Prequels were kind of meh. Then they made Clone Wars, amazing. They made tons of interquel stuffs, amazing. They made Rogue One, which I know is technically right after the prequels, but still very, very good. Heck, I like Solo a lot. I know people don't. Solo, if they didn't listen to the backlash, people obviously after Solo, internet backlashed, so they canceled all their projects. The projects we wouldn't have got were the Boba Fett movie, the fucking Maul movie, and the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, and now we only have one of those, and it's a TV show.
Honestly, I think the TV show will be better than the movie, though.
Oh, yeah, most definitely, but because they have more time to tell a good story. But a Maul movie, a movie where it sets up Maul and Solo, then you see Maul in the Boba Fett one, and then he gets his own movie, would have been amazing. It would have been the payoff to 7 seasons of Clone Wars and basically the prequel trilogy.
Yeah. I think they should have, instead of just jumping straight away, they heard backlash right away. They're like, oh no, backlash, we got to do something about it. We got to cancel everything. If they just waited it out, and after Mando, I'm sure people would have been liking Solo more, because I think that since Solo felt a lot different than all the other Star Wars movies, because it's more of a kind of Western vibe, that people kind of felt off about it. But then you have Mando that's even more like that, and people started loving it. Maybe people would show more appreciation for Solo after Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So if they just waited and seen how many people like Mandalorian, then maybe they wouldn't have had to cancel all those other projects.
Heck, Alden Ehrenreich is now in like a new streaming. He got picked up for some TV show that's streaming on Peacock. They could have just gave him a Solo Disney Plus show. They're giving it to. We're getting a Cassian Andor series. I don't see why we can't get a Solo one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not because of the failing of that. It's because of fan backlash.
Also, another thing is I think just people hate seeing somebody else play Han Solo, because he's such an iconic character as Harrison Ford, and when you see other people play the characters you love, they automatically will start getting hate.
Yeah, recasting unless done extremely well is a bitch. Just any way you cut it, because you're taking.
But they had to, though, because he's supposed to be young.
Yeah,
he's like
Harrison Ford is in his like 80s.
60s?
Harrison Ford is old. That guy's like in his either late 70s or 80s.
No way. I thought he was like high 60s.
No, Harrison Ford, I'm 80% sure. Let me check. I'm pretty sure he's the same age as my grandfather. Wait.
Really? He doesn't seem like that old.
It's because he has a hipster earring. Yeah, he's 77 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. I was off.
Dude, that's insane. How old was Mark Hamill?
Yeah, but Mark Hamill's probably around the same age then, right?
Oh, no. Mark Hamill's 68. I didn't realize he was that much younger.
Oh, so I was right. I was in the right age range for Mark Hamill.
I actually think you're in the same. I think you're in the right. I think and Carrie Fisher too. Yeah, you were in the right age for literally everyone in Star Wars except for Harrison Ford.
Oh well, it happened.
Yeah, no, dude. Who were we talking about the other day? And then I looked it up afterwards. I was like, holy crap, they're much older. Regardless.
I forget.
Yeah, we talk about so much crap.
Back to the sequel trilogy. Another thing that kind of hinted at them wanting to make the sequel trilogy not canon. It did a callback to season 4, episode 13 of Disney's animated show, The Rebels. Star Wars Rebels. It's called A World Between Worlds, where they introduce the veil of the Force. So it's basically the mystical dimension of Force that connects all time and space. So it's basically showed what Palpatine. I guess it was kind of like mirrors where they could travel through time.
Yeah.
So I guess they're kind of gonna go off that concept of them going through space and time, and that bring them to a different timeline where the sequel trilogy takes place. Which I feel like they would have to do a lot more explaining with that for more fans to understand how it's not on the timeline, because there's probably a lot of fans that haven't watched Rebels, and even if they do, they only spent like 20 minutes, maybe not even talking about what that is.
Also, even in that episode, they don't even have alternate timelines. It's just like it makes sense. Like the Force connects everything, so it makes sense that the Force connects people through time, because we've seen that before. So they're not really time traveling. They're just getting in connections with the past versions of the Force. You know what I mean? Like they didn't really change the past because you never officially. Did we ever officially see Ahsoka die, or do you just assume she dies?
Well, she actually did. Well, actually, she might have not actually died.
Yeah.
I think the reason why they thought she died is because she was pulled into.
That's what.
The
Yeah.
future.
So it might be that.
So I wonder. Yeah.
Because that's my thought process is, did she die and they saved her? Or was the timeline, like the kind of, is it one of those cases where she always got saved?
Yeah.
So that's why everyone assumed she did when she disappeared. Because Star Wars never really does parallel dimensions, you know what I mean? Like Marvel and DC do it too. But with the exception of that one time traveling instance, they'll have to completely rewrite the book.
True.
Because I feel like,
and also I don't know how that will affect. They'll go into that within the Mandalorian or the future shows because it takes place after she gets pulled out of there.
yeah, that will be. I think what I think the biggest problem is. Star Wars, at its core, is a fantasy western, whereas alternate dimensions is sci-fi. So intrinsically, it doesn't. That sounds really stupid and kind of like, I'm a film student. This is my opinion. But like, it's like if in the Marvel movies, they started going into like a rom-com romance thing. You'd be like, this genre doesn't make sense in my Captain America film. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
You'd just be confused by like, they'd be like, now we can time travel and here's our alternate dimension thing. I'd be like, yeah, okay, I'll get behind this, but now it's much more comic booky than Star Wars. Kind of, we have mystical power and we draw it from inside, sort of deal.
Yeah, I feel like when Star Wars was first made, it was kind of just the Force being mysterious, and
Yeah.
it's just the Force. It's just out there, connects all things. And then as years go on and more content comes, they get more explanation. There's more things the Force can do, which is endless. It's just like endless content of the Force being able to do more and more stuff. Like it's endless. They keep on just releasing. Oh yeah, the Force could do this too. This could happen with the Force. So I just hope they don't get to the point where it's just like, oh, okay, this is getting a little bit too much now. Like,
Yes.
you gotta just dial it back a bit, you know?
That was honestly, I think the sequels did it better than the prequel trilogy in the sense where they didn't try to explain the Force, and the Force powers made sense if the Force is mystical in nature, which we can kind of assume it is. I know the midichlorians and shit, but it's always kind of assumed that the Force is a little more kind of a energy that surrounds you and binds you. It makes sense that you could communicate with people across the galaxy, not because of something in your blood, but because of the life force of the universe connecting you and this other person. I know, like, people had the problem with, like, the Luke thing and the Force projection, but it makes sense that if there's an energy that connects all living beings, that you can project yourself to another living being in the network. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So even though the sequels have their faults, they never play with the Force in a way that wouldn't make sense in the original trilogy. Like, even in the original trilogy, Luke talks to Darth Vader, Leia just immediately senses where Luke is for no particular reason after flying away in a spaceship. Like, they're always kind of seeing each other in situations. So it makes sense. So I don't understand why they would try to muck it up with, like, you're right, I don't want them to be like Deus Ex Machina, where it's like, well, now I have my Force Captain America shield. Waka paka! Swing, swing! And you're like, why?
What? No, I think that's actually a good theory. That's why the shield always comes back to him.
Just
That's why.
When the universes eventually click together, he'll be like, Ray, I have something to tell you! I'm Force sensitive!
That's why it's also never explained, because that's just the way it is. There's no question to be asked. Like, the only person that ever questioned it was Spider-Man when he said shield doesn't
obey the
laws of physics. Yeah. So it's just like you don't need explanation. The explanation is that it just comes back. That's what it is. You know, just like the Force. You don't need explanation. It just connects all living things. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, if you're that nitpicky about the movie, you've got the wrong idea. Like, if you go into a Captain America movie frustrated that the shield doesn't work properly, you're doing it wrong.
You must be a physicist.
Yeah. Have you seen those videos where it's like professional physicists break down Marvel movies? They're so funny.
That would never happen.
Some of them are really funny. It's like, I don't know if this was happening. Yes, I don't know that I could summon a magical hammer to myself. Thank you, Dr. Einstein.
If they want to critique any movie on, like, if that's possible, it should be Fast and Furious, not Marvel.
Fast and Furious, you're right, Fast and Furious is...
Because that's supposed to be real people, no powers, it's supposed to be just, like, the real world. Like, Marvel isn't the real world, that's superpowers and anything can happen. This, like, Fast and Furious is just regular people driving cars, and just obscure stuff happens.
Dude, my favorite part of... Don't get me wrong, I actually find the Fast and Furious movies enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And I love The Rock so much. Like, I will watch even trash. I will watch anything that man is in. But I love the part where they're like, hey, Hobbs, go pull down the helicopter while you're holding onto a moving truck. And he does. And it's like, yeah, that checks out. I'm like, don't get me wrong, The Rock is strong. Could he grab a helicopter and pull it? Maybe. Could he smash it into a cliff while holding onto a truck? No.
Captain America can't.
Oh my gosh. Have you seen? I'm gonna send you this. There's like a meme where you know the sound. I can't compete. I just can't compete. You know that sound?
Yep.
Someone put it over the scene where Bucky is looking at Cap pull the helicopter down while he's trying to pull the helicopter. And he looks at Cap and goes, I can't fucking compete. I'm like, yeah, that's accurate.
Gotta love memes.
I do. As quarantine progresses, I'm slowly deteriorating and I'll be like, what Marvel meme do we have for today?
True.
I have nothing really more to say in the sequel trilogy. You got anything?
I guess just to sum it up, I just say, even though we are disappointed in a lot of things they did, I think Disney should just not play with anything, because then that could just lead to more confusion or more errors to come in the future, and it's probably just best just leave it alone and move on. But if they do end up making it not canon and want to produce another sequel to replace it, I damn sure hope they do a good job, and then I'd be like, okay, thank God they did it. But if not, then I'd be very disappointed. So hopefully Taika Waititi is the one directing the next film, which it seems like he is. So
to close out, I would say if they get rid of the sequels, I hope they don't remake them. You know what I mean? I'm at the point.
I'd rather them not remake them, but if they do and they end up good, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, obviously you'd be happy. But the
it still leaves confusion, though.
Harrison Ford will not come back. Like, that is a fact. They had to pay him so much money to show up for 2.5 minutes on the last one. Carrie Fisher is dead.
That's the thing. I don't even think that, like, in our pitches, we really don't even need the original characters to be in the sequels.
I mean, the thing is, if you put them in, then they take the show. But if you don't put them in, then the question is, why is all this stuff happening and the main hero is the last one on it? Like, it's a lose-lose situation. Because you know what Star Wars fans. Yeah. If they don't show up, then it's a problem. If they do show up, it's kind of a bit of a problem. Honestly, if you make it not canon, I don't particularly care. I think it's a little bit of waste of money. All I want to see is new original content. It's why everybody likes Mando, because it's new content. It's why everyone liked the Clone Wars Season 7, because it's new content. It's why everyone is looking forward to the Ahsoka thing. It's new content. Heck, I mean,
I say we just agree to just not touch it then.
Yeah, even if they get rid of it, just pretend it didn't happen and then forget about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, dude, I can't wait for Taika Waititi's. I hope they give him, like, a weird character to go off of. Like, they're like, you have to make a movie about R2-D2, and you can't have him translate.
Jar Jar Binks.
You know, that would be, honestly, I think if Taika Waititi could make a movie about everyone, you know it would be like a comedy satire drama about Jar Jar Binks, where at the end it's like super funny, and at the end he realizes that he like caused the downfall of the Republic, and then the ending is just depressing. It's just he's sitting there and it's like, what you say that you only meant well, and he's just like crying into his floppy ears like, missile destroys the galaxy.
That would be everyone's new favorite movie.
Dude, I'd
Star Wars
pay
movie.
so much money to see a Jar Jar Binks movie where he just slowly realizes that the genocide of planets is his fault.
Just have a bunch of dark humor in that film, just like how in the episode he directed in Mandalorian, they had stormtroopers punching Baby Yoda.
That still's my...
Like, you know what we should do? We should, the character that everyone adores, just an innocent, sweet little baby, let's have a bunch of dudes punch the shit out of it.
My favorite part of that whole episode is when they keep walkie-talkie back. They're like, can we come in now? No, he just killed someone for interrupting him. Okay, we'll wait it out.
See, that's the humor I love, that what he brings to his shows and movies, because you just see stormtroopers as these robots basically with no emotions, or they just follow orders, and they just just like how the clones were the same way until we got Clone Wars. We've seen what they're really like, and how they talk to each other, and how they actually have character within them. He kind of brought the characters to the stormtroopers that never had any like emotions, or they brought character to them really, besides Finn, basically.
Yes.
But yeah, so we finally got to see them, how they actually have personalities, and that was kind of funny to watch.
It's actually realistic humor, because people I know, like a review I read like a day after was like, it's weird that he inserts humor in this, but I'm like, no, because in all the movies we see like Darth Vader or whoever be like, they'll like kill stormtroopers out of anger and then leave, and you got to imagine just the other stormtroopers where they're like, well, rip Jeff, and then have to drag their like best friend's body off and like put him in a trash compactor, and you're like, yeah, that is kind of funny. If you think about it, that anyone would still be loyal to an empire where one day you could show up to your job and then get killed.
Yeah, it's basically just furthering our presentation of our tour presentation on Taika Waititi, and how his humor is realistic, and it's like awkward humor, how people would actually react and behave in real life and not just in a movie. You know, that's just him showing his skills off more in this show.
Yeah, suck it, everyone who didn't like our presentation. We have a podcast now where we can.
Too bad he didn't actually live stream into our class.
We should. The greatest sadness of my life is that Taika Waititi did not give us a call.
Yeah.
Of course, Kova's tiny. What the hell? Okay, I'm having an aneurysm. Let's wrap this up.
All right. So I think that does it for our news report on Disney getting rid of the sequel trilogy.
Yep.
And make sure to like and subscribe to this on YouTube. And if you're not watching on YouTube, check it out on Spotify. And we have it on Anchor too. Check out all our social medias at the Blip Pod. Instagram and Facebook is where we mainly post our updates and news. Mm-hmm. And what else we got?
I can't think of anything else. So, I'm gonna make a movie.
Oh yeah.
What's
TikTok, Joey Harris 2168.
This is true. We're also, I believe we're on, I don't know what people get their podcasts on, but we are, let me check. We are on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and Radio Public. So.
Does it upload to Apple Podcasts too automatically?
I believe so. It says that on our thing now. It says
on
available
Anchor?
listening background. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I did not know that.
Neither did I.
Okay, yeah, Apple Podcasts. That's a popular one, too.
So, when in doubt, listeners, I'm going to make a movie/TV show recommendation for this week. If you, or anyone you love, is stuck inside during quarantine, I highly recommend the 1990s Spider-Man TV show, which I've watched it recently, and it does all the major Spider-Man arcs from the comics, and it does it really well, and all the voice acting is fantastic. So that is my recommendation for the week. Stay nerdy.
And positive.
Even though this video was slightly negative on my part, but I just get frustrated when people give into Twitter hate.
Everyone else stay positive.
Yes, stay positive. I have like coffee and onion breath. And with that, hasta la vista.
And we'll see you guys next time.